LinkedIn and YouTube, and also so honored and never uh, not excited to have Kelly on the show because it's magical when we can just take a word like consistency, which is today's word, and spin all kinds of different perspectives and share them. And more importantly, or as important, learn from you, the audience. So, love to hear what consistency means to you and how you might apply it. With that, chat's wide open. We depend on you to be relevant and create some wonderful takeaways if possible. So, Kelly, it just seems like every conversation we have just leads to a better, bigger conversation as
Yeah.
time goes on. So, why don't you freshen up everybody on what's new and exciting and your initial thoughts on consistency?
Yeah. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but depending on where you're tuning in from. Yeah. So I have consistently been here all year on Thursdays. And it is kind of funny because the first thing I thought when I saw it is there is no greater person to talk about the word consistency than the most consistent live stream man on LinkedIn than Donald Cohen. um, and secondarily, I thought of right away, and I'm sure it's because it's the time of the year, is consistency is one of those things, New Year's resolutions, how many people are joining a gym January 1, and then how many people will be done with the gym by the end of the first quarter. And it's because of consistency. It's to 21 days in a row of doing something, then it becomes a habit, which I actually prefer to say the word part of your lifestyle, only because habit to me seems to have like a negative connotation or more so. But when you are consistent about something, it's part of your life. Like you do this every day, 600 and sometimes. This isn't just, it's not a habit. It's part of who you are and part of your lifestyle. That's how you start your day every day. Um, so yeah, I'm interested to see what people have to say. And of course, I think there's so many avenues to go down about consistency with, whether it's your messaging, like that was the part of my post today about consistency with your messaging is all about your brand and the expectation that your audience has. And consistency, whether it's with newsletters, with pollings, your postings. I mean, there's so many different directions that we can go. And of course, again, personal life, whether it's the gym or eating better, those sorts of things. So yeah, I'm interested to see what people have to say. And I think for the day, we should just bomb you, Mr. Consistency, because you are the poster child for it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And it's always appreciated to be appreciated and recognized. And, to be consistent, you have to have the support necessary to continue something, right? I mean, when you stop something, it's because you have to start something else, right? You can only run so much and then maybe your legs ache, and that tells you it's time to stop. Now, if you can have support during the run, and what reminds me, I see so many heroic stories of
Mm,
people who did just unbelievable things, but were the first to admit that without their support, they could have never done that. They could have never kept going. I mean, it's like in a boxing match, you always see the corner people, right? And as soon as that person gets a break and sits down for a minute or whatever they give them, everybody goes to work on them, right? That they throw water at them, they massage them, they do whatever they have to do to get them ready. And the key is, how do you not leave the ring and have that support while you're doing it to keep doing it and not leave it? And when you leave something, it's usually not because you couldn't have done more, it's that you gave up on yourself, right? You
mm.
know there's more to be done. You know there's more you could do. And at a certain point, you get frustrated, you get disappointed, you're not reaching goals or achieving what you went out to. And that's again where the support group gives you perspective. And you're always worse on yourself than your best friends would be on you. And I think that's why it's important to have best friends. And what I've learned over so many hundreds of episodes is the friendships that we now have developed that go beyond just a LinkedIn connection.
Mhm.
Just to go on someone who you work with, but somebody who you really look forward every day to working together with, right? And it's not just you, it's them. And, there's not enough success for anybody that you don't have time to applaud or celebrate somebody else's. And it also makes you feel like that's how you're going to feel when you reach that, right? So setting somebody on a stage and applauding them is the same thing you hope to have. And that group that's on the stage will be in the audience for you. Leslie's here. If all we had was Leslie and Harvey, we'd have a full house. And I know we're going to attract more than that. Kelly and Don, Leslie has been a tremendous contributor to the show, is here every Saturday with Catherine Chadwick. They did a wonderful event last week that I watched and showcased what they're doing and really showed the consistency of taking something like this and expanding, extending it for yourself, right? So what you learn here, you can apply later in so many ways. So, and Leslie has Think and Grow Rich on Fridays. I'm not reading it off a card. And Mind Over Matter on Mondays. Got to applaud Kelly and Christy Howard. Those shows are just getting so cool. I mean, if you love adventure and excitement and action-driven characters and heroes, that's really the place you want to settle in and enjoy. And the same thing for Harvey, who is on Tuesdays following the show, who is now the number one or number two, depending on what's going on the franchise event calendar.
Always number one to us, Harvey.
Oh, for sure. I know you're only going to keep getting better and stronger. And that's the beauty of it, is not so much where you are and what you've done, but what you have in position to leap forward in 2024. And that's why I'm so excited, is to cross out this year and start the fresh year with everything we paid and learned and worked so hard for, to see a year from now where we can say, remember, we had that show a year ago and look at what happened since then. So there's something to amazement. Leslie is overjoyed with emotion. Thank you so much.
Virtual hug.
Us. And I think that's so cool, is you see how it works. You compliment somebody on something sincere and you get a response, which then elicits other responses, and it just continues to grow and improve. Tuesday guest, oh my God, what a guy, Kelly.
Yes, he's so good.
Yeah, and I think that, if we can marry entertainment with education and inspiration, where you can watch and say, I enjoyed that, I learned something from that, and I feel so much better for it. You've just made sure that time spent was well spent. And when you have something like really good, you tend to want more of it.
Yeah.
And then you tend to want to be part of it, and then you want to be it. And that's a natural evolution. So, Kelly, with all this fanfare and these wonderful people, it's hard not to get excited.
Yeah, and even to wrap consistency into all of this, because that's what it is. Consistency of doing lives. And it's funny because Christy and I were talking this morning, and Jay Dobbins was our guest this week, he's a retired undercover special agent with ATF, and he infiltrated the Hells Angels. But we really went more into the mental health aspects of it, because that's become our focus, and really going deep on how his work impacted his family, his relationship with his family, transitioning out, and the aftermath of things. And it's just powerful having real conversation. And that's really what I wanted to do, and what we've, continued to do. And then little plug to our year-end show, which will be Craig Sawyer, who he works with child trafficking. He works for Veterans for Child Rescue, and he also did Contraland, which you can find on YouTube, which is, a mind blower for so many reasons. But the consistency of doing a show, and I will say, kind of to go off what you were tapping on, Dawn, if you would have told me at the beginning of the year where I'd be wrapping up the year on lives, I probably would have been like, "Oh my gosh, no way." Not that I don't think that I can't do anything I put my mind to, but it's just been such an evolution of so many things, and honestly, the consistency of having to show up because I was really in a not a great place last November. I was just feeling not engaged in things and feeling, unfulfilled in some work things and not living in my purpose and just all the things. And this all has helped me to consistently have to show up not just for others but for myself. And then how it snowballed just by doing, and truthfully, the first little leap of fear into doing my first live with Dawn, on January 19th, I believe is the magical date. Um, and it changed my life because it started a different layer of consistency, and I had no clue where it was gonna go, where it was gonna take me, but it was just like, I'm going on this ride because everything about it feels right, um, and the support, like you said, Don, the consistent support from people in this community has been incredible. And Leslie and Harvey are two great examples. Leslie consistently helps all of us. She puts out her weekly list of all the live streams and audio rooms, which I use as my cheat sheet every week because I can never remember. Um, and Harvey, he goes out of his way to consistently help those job seeking, with his post every Sunday. Um, so, and then of course, I could never say enough about consistency with my girl Christy because I would never be able to do the awesome journey without her. She consistently is there and helps supports, and I don't even want to say supports, but supports me as a friend, but because she is the my I mean, I couldn't do it without her, and that's everything. And having that um consistency in your relationship too, right? I think all of us, about being consistent with one another and supporting each other. Because Don, you and I have talked about this a little bit, because there's nothing worse than someone who wants you to continually to support them, but then they're not doing anything to support
Mhm.
anybody else. And it's like, well, it is kind of a give and take. And I'm not obligated to support anybody. And when people support, like when Leslie first came out with her list, is a great example. It felt so good because I had no idea she was going to do that and or include my show on it. And it was like, God, that just feels awesome. And it does make you go, I want to do anything I can to help you because it's genuine. It's when you get that, non-genuine support, and you can tell. I mean, you really just can. It just feels great, and it does make you go, I'm going to continue to do more because any kind of consistent encouragement will launch people to go beyond what they ever thought they could do. So that's where I'm thinking right now. What are your thoughts, Don?
I'm thinking along the same lines as you're thinking, because you don't know what you don't know, and you definitely know what not know where something could lead, but you do know who you're with on the journey. And along the way, you trust them to know stuff you're never going to know, and they trust you to know stuff. And in the middle, you meet and you go over your stuff, and then you take the best of the best and you go back and you find some more, and then you meet more people. And what you end up with is an organic team that couldn't have been assembled by force, right?
Mhm.
It had to come together because of just continuous interactions, communications. And that same phrase is time will expose you or promote you. And a lot of people who may come out of the gate looking a little not 100% surprise you because they just keep on accelerating. And then there's some superstar looking people that you would wonder, wow. And you find out how disappointing they can be week in and week out. Right. And that's been the beauty of having about 600 shows or whatever they are, is I've probably gotten to run probably 150 people through this show with me and
Yeah.
really see who lasted and really see whose intent was what they said they were going to do to what they ended up doing. And
Mhm.
that's the beauty of acceleration is by nature, you're going to leave a lot of slow stuff behind. And
Yeah.
that's where it should be. And you want to run with the runners, or you want to run with people faster than you. And you want to run with generous people, and not just financially generous, but generous with their time, generous with their consideration. I can't tell you how many times Leslie or Kelly or Harvey have said, "Hey, your shoes are untied. Something's missing, or you're not showing up, or something." And I would have never known. I mean, when you've got people looking out for you and having your back, you can focus on looking forward and just focusing on going ahead versus stopping, starting, going over stuff. And the other thing is, you're seeing them accelerate and seeing things they may not see or know. And that's why this new collaboration group I'm so excited about, because we can actually sit around a table and go over whatever is an issue we can work on. Here we
Yeah.
can go over a lot of stuff we can talk about and share, but why not, sit down just like you would if someone was having homework trouble and, hey, go over what is it they're asking, and what do I need to know to help you? And it becomes a community event. And you know what? Someone comes out of there without an obstacle, or with a
Mhm.
little confidence or understanding to say, okay, if I add this to this, I mean, last time we covered newsletters. Tomorrow today actually we're going to cover polls. But let's get back to our wonderful audience. Okay, we go to Harvey. Well, maybe Leslie. Consistency creates great habits for sure. Harvey says there are so many intricacies to achieve success and make real connections in LinkedIn. Great to discuss them and support one another in our new initiatives for sure. And,
Yeah.
this is really getting to be not only more comfortable, but also it is like theater that you create. It is
Mhm.
artistic where you bring certain things in, whether you use a poll, whether you try a newsletter, whether you're tagging. One should fill their toolbox with everything and know what everything is. And you can self educate. And that's a good start by looking at YouTubes and Googling and asking yourself a question to an answer you just got, right? You just solve something. What did that open up as maybe an opportunity to do even better? And when you're doing less work and getting more benefit, that's when the fun begins. It's only when you're doing more work and less benefit, and you can't sustain this.
But
You need,
that's part of the ride, right? And I think that's where most people forget because they see where other people are, and it's like, but they didn't start there. They did start with all the heavy lifting and the lack of, it was high investment, low reward until later. You got to do all the heavy lifting. It doesn't just happen because you look at somebody else and think, well, you guys are doing it. I want to do it too. Well, we still have to do some work. I mean, we can help shorten the path perhaps, but you still got to put in the effort, right?
oh, absolutely. We can't want something more than somebody wants it for themselves. I mean, it's like we'll set the pace, we'll demonstrate, but now someone's got to make that step or accept that it's not going to happen in the time frame,
Yeah.
and also take accountability, say it's because of me, it's going to take slower, may not happen, and that's why they say if your why is big enough, you'll figure out the how to. If there's something that needs to be done, it's amazing when people only have so much time, like
Mhm.
a week to clear everything up, right? Sell their house, sell their car, sell everything. Let's say they're leaving the country or they need a bunch of money. They figure it out, because they just get it done. They don't really have a lot of choices. It's like buy this as a drop dead date, get it right, or take the consequences. And I think if people really look at their life as having supreme value and a blessing,
Mhm.
that's enough why,
Yeah.
right? I'm here, I'm alive, I can do stuff. Why aren't I?
Yeah.
And we always advocate helping others. So it's not like we're that materialistic. How much can you make today? How much can you sell today? I mean, there's a lot of organizations, that's all they pump people up with, you know,
Yeah.
where how good can we get today? How good can we help others get? And that's the reputation you want on LinkedIn is, hey, they're a good person, they're helpful, but they got principles and they have values.
Mhm.
And it's easy when you're not making a lot to be uncorruptible, right? You know, I mean, if someone's paying you $250,000 a year or something for a great job, I mean, you're tempted all the time to make accommodations or do things. But when you're volunteering, right, you can be 100% integrity. And I think that's what people go on. Is this person a trustworthy person? Is this person worth my investment? And you know what I find? If you look and you work at it, there's lots of people. You know, I'd love to say me and Kelly and Leslie and Harvey and all these other wonderful people, Dennis, are rare. There's more of them, but they're so defensive because they should be, right? Because of the salesy stuff out there, the scammy stuff, the pitch slap that you continually post about. I
Yes, I care
applaud you
about
for that. Is really telling the difference, you know, between the fast buck that isn't going to be there to maybe the slow journey that will create a lifestyle and an opportunity
yes.
that will support you for things that you never thought of, you know, because I see so many interviews with famous people and they all admitted that they'd rather be lucky than smart, right? And if you can be around the right places at the right time, you'll find luck starts to find you, you know, and at the same time, you know, they say luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Mhm.
So getting supremely prepared, anticipating it, manifesting it. I mean, there's so much, and Leslie and actually Catherine cover that on Mindset Saturdays, is really how you can adjust your perspective or your viewpoint or your environment. And that's enough sometimes to get you from sad to glad, you know, from
Yeah.
inactive to active. And it's always great to have a workout buddy. I mean, last thing, have you ever been on
Yes,
a plane?
accountability is everything.
And fun. If you're not having
Yes.
fun, you're not doing it right. Thank you, Leslie. You're welcome. Tuesday guest. Yeah, we talked about that. Wonderful gentleman.
Yeah.
Inspiring. And that's another thing. All the videos we talked about are still there. So you
Yeah.
can go to Kelly or Christie's profile and see this week and see 2 weeks ago, see as much as you want. You can go to my YouTube. There's 600 of these if you want to take a year off and watch. There are some, okay, we talked about that. Um, okay, Leslie says our gentleman was super vulnerable. And I
Yes.
think everything took a full circle to get there. Do more what you love, drop the things you don't, for sure. It's consistency and spaced repetitive intervals over time. Almost
Yeah.
sounds like you're reading out of a manual, but I know you're not, Leslie. A lot of detail. Oh, she's a friend for an awesome journey. And Dennis is a great friend, you know? I mean, it's like taking a road trip with everybody for an hour and returning to where you started at the end. Um, I forget less when my activities are consistent and of high value.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, everybody's a work in progress. Give yourself credit for still working. Hats
Yeah.
on to you two for sharing and carrying your wisdom with us listeners. Well, it's listeners who enjoy and support us that allow us and motivate us to support you back. And that's how things move. It's the essence of mastermind for sure. Sanja's here. Good morning. I've seen you a couple days before. Welcome back. We must have added some value. Thank you. That's why I sing. You sing, you dance. I mean,
I
you do.
love
I'm waiting for Leslie on Broadway to show up. A great why is why not, for sure. Uh,
yeah.
Leslie says, I have a standing 11:30 on Thursdays. I want to stop in and see what you were cooking up. See you both tomorrow for sure. Enjoy, Leslie. It's always great to have you in the house. Um,
Yes.
and then we got Sonia. I enjoy working in success pods, accountability partners. Well, great. You know, and everybody fits into whatever they're most comfortable with, but realize things are stepping stones to other things. So it's
Mhm.
not really a matter where you start, it's that you do start and you get consistent in whatever you uh, want to be accountable for. So don't follow someone else's footsteps. If they're moving
Oh,
faster than you or slower than you, and you can moderate as you go. And as you go, things get easier because you're repeating them, learning them, getting new knowledge, meeting new people. And that opens your horizons to say, okay, now I'll take this step. I mean, Carl was on yesterday. It's only been with us about 6, 7 weeks, give or take,
doing so great though.
and he's gearing for his own show,
I love it.
right? And that's terrific because that was Kelly and Harvey and mine's interest is how do we do things that we did organically and by here and there to how do we compress the time for best practices? How do we compress the time from going live? And then how do we learn from everybody? Because I've learned so much from the awesome journey, from the franchise show, from what we're posting. Because when you're doing the same things, you're learning and sharing. The people are saying that's where you stop and where you can't go anymore, and how you have to do things are really minimizing people's potential. You
Mhm.
know, it's all like, like when you're kids, get out and play. It's a nice day. What are you hanging around here for? And then come back and tell us what you did and had so much fun with, right? And we can live vicariously through each other. So Kelly, I mean, it's coming up to end of year. I know everybody's thinking
So
that way. Um, it seems like, in any situation where you're coming from abundance, you can't help but have that manifest in every way you project and every way you speak, because in essence, all we're doing here, even though we're live, we see each other, is we're communicating.
right. That's it. Yeah, and I think there's so many things that you said there that I I could chew on. But one of them for sure is specifically because this is LinkedIn. We as individuals are our brand, and branding needs to be consistent. And that is one of the things that I've definitely focused on this year with, as an example, the awesome journey. I don't add things to my plate unless I can consistently do it. Um, expanding, knowing that, like, hey, I want to start doing these kind of posts, or I want to start doing highlight reels. I want to do this because, and this applies to business, but also yourself, from your brand perspective. When you're not consistent, it confuses your audience. Now, they may not sit there and go, "Whoa, I'm totally confused by you, Don Cohen," because you're not consistent. But their subconscious is confused because they don't you don't know what to think of the thing, of the brand, the product, the service, whatever it is. And again, excuse me, that applies to business because it's the same thing with a business brand. If it's inconsistent, it confuses us, and then we repel from confusion. We don't like that. We like consistency and know what to expect out of something, which is the same thing with our personal brands. I think one of the things, and I believe it was Kim Wheatley, um, which, man, I need to text her actually. But I will never forget. I did a Zoom call with her, and she goes, "Oh my God, you're exactly like you are on the show." And I kind of chuckled and I said, "Well, girl, I don't know how to be anybody else, ha ha." Um, but I think that's the beauty of doing lives also is it for me anyways, it has allowed me to be so comfortable with myself and know, like, hey, if I get asked a question that I don't know the answer to, like, nobody's going to throw eggs and tomatoes at me. Or if I, lose my train of thought mid-sentence, which has happened multiple times, that's just part of being a human. And I think the other part of it is when being real, and kind of to go with Leslie talking about our guest this week, Jay, being so vulnerable. The reason people are able to be vulnerable is because they're comfortable with their surroundings and they feel safe. And I think that's all of us. What we should be doing for one another is allowing a safe space to be ourselves and not be worried about being judged, because that is a big thing, particularly on social media, is being afraid of what are they going to say? How are they going to respond? You got to get to the place where you go, you know what? I don't care. I'm just being me. And I know I'm not for everybody. And that's okay. But the people that I am for, I mean, how wonderful is that? Because they will consistently support, push, motivate, all of those things, which is wonderful. But then to wrap back around really to personal brand and consistency, and accountability, because I think that's so key. Um, is and this goes with, I guess, the collaboration group, is when you have people who are supporting you, it does help push you to accomplish things because
Mm.
you're like, "Oh, man, I got to show up next week. I got to have this stuff done." Or using your example of you have to sell everything in a week, it's because there's urgency there. Like you've got to do it. When there and I say this about myself, I and I think Leslie mentioned this. I'm more clear and better and can better respond to things and get when I'm busy. Like I can get I love that feel, which is why I love a startup environment, because I like the change, the constant movement. When it's flat, I mean, granted, I like downtime, but there's a difference between having a little rejuvenation time as opposed to being idle. And the old saying is, the idle mind is the devil's playground. Um, that's when I don't operate well in that space because that's when I can procrastinate and I can do things. So it's always good to have people in your life that keep you accountable. Your friends, hey girl, I haven't heard from you in a couple days. Is everything okay? Oh no, I'm and getting them to, kick you in the butt like you need to sometimes and be like, hey, you need to get back on track, and staying consistent in your life. Um, and I do just friendly reminder because it is the holidays. I think this applies to all year round, but I do try to say it all the time now because it is the holidays. Do reach out to that person you haven't heard from in a while. Send them a text, DM them, whatever. Even if it is a connection on LinkedIn, I've done that a few times with people and have actually found out that they did have some not so great things happening in their life. Um, and maybe that's another thing. We should consistently care about one another. That costs nothing.
Yeah, no, I think you make so many wonderful, valuable points, and little things that take very little to do can do so much for people who haven't even had little things lately.
Yes.
People send you a box of cookies, and maybe they took an afternoon and baked a bunch and packed a bunch and sent a bunch. Well, it was their effort, their loving touch that they applied to them, and it's the humble and it's the simple that become the most profound because they're not meant to impress. They're not meant to compete, but it's personalized. And I think the other thing you said that's so valuable is there's a need to be needed. And when you feel needed and accepted, you want to come out to play more often,
Mhm.
right? If someone says, "Come on and play," and every time you play with them, it's someone gets hurt or it's not good, naturally you don't want to go out. But if it's like someone who really makes you better for their time with you, right? And there's relatives. I know I had relatives that just being around an uncle or an aunt and just being in amazement of the
Yeah.
connection and the family and the similarities between people. You can't replace that.
Mm-mm.
A brand new car might impress you in a whole different way, in a very strong way, but it won't fulfill what those simple things and those important people. And one thing I had to experience, my mother lived in Detroit 6 months and Florida 6 months for about 40 years. And she had a little condo about 800 feet. And every year we would get out there for a week, either Christmas vacation or Easter vacation or spring break. And there wasn't much to do there except go to the pool, right? They had a pool with a little clubhouse. And what I learned from the time I was 30 and up, I'd always end up in the steam room or the sauna with all these old guys. And they were starved.
Horrifying.
Yeah, they were starved for conversation because all they could think about is when their grandson was coming or their nephew. I mean, that was the whole, when is someone going to visit? And what I learned, and some of these people were pretty successful, most of them were snowbirds, um, is they never talked about their career. Never did
Thank
they say, I sold a bunch of this and I made a big bonus check or I got promoted. It was always Thanksgiving with my family or Christmas or hunting or fishing with my relatives. Every one of them talked about family. That was the most important thing to him. So I said to myself, if in 40 years or so, that's who I'm going to be, why not start learning from that now
Yeah.
and not look back and say, well, I could have went there, but I didn't because I was so caught up in the moment. I didn't realize these people aren't going to be here forever, and this is where my memories are going to last going forward. So, it's really what's working for you. The other thing about consistency is it relates to so many elements because it could just be time. Like this
Yeah.
show is every day, 11 a.m. Eastern. It's consistent. It's every day. It's consistent. But the content isn't always consistent. The guests definitely aren't the same, so you can be consistent in where it matters to other people, where you don't have the confusion or, hey, they're there when they're there and now they announce they're going to be there. Because you know what? People have a necessary element of wanting to plan, wanting to have something. Okay, if you're going to be here, let me mark it down and then I'll know it. And I think making it easier on everybody to make it easy on you, when you give somebody the can opener with the can, and say, this will make it even easier for you to get the benefit of what's inside this can. And I think, take that extra step or two, take that extra word or two. If you're going to do something, do it with all you got. Because, if it's a generous gift, give them the reason why, right? Say, because you've been such a great friend and you helped me out in so many ways this year. And I know I wasn't able to reciprocate in kind, but because of that, do me a favor and enjoy this because it'll make me feel better, right? I remember going out to lunch a couple weeks ago and somebody said, let me take care of the bill. And, I just met the person. I said, no, let's split it. And there was like, no, I want to take care of it. And I say, I'm going to feel worse not paying my half than I will feeling good about benefiting from someone giving me my half.
Oh,
You
interesting.
know? And we ended up splitting it, but it was for a good reason because I didn't want or feel like I should get more than what everybody participated in. And it's rare for someone to give things back. I mean, have you ever seen someone win a contest and they take off their sash and crown and give it to the person next to them? Because
No,
it
it's
does get
usually the
often.
opposite.
But what I'm
It's
saying
like,
is,
I want to tackle you and take it.
well, that's the key is when you do something no one expects that's above and beyond. When these heroes risk their life,
Mm,
that some people will never even realize what they did, and they can never even say what they did until a certain point. That's like I say, integrity is what you do in the dark,
yeah.
right? When no one sees you, but you see yourself. So Sonia comes back with being human also means leaving space for grace, for sure.
Yes.
And every
You
little thing you do like that expands your goodness and the projection. And if you're going to amplify your reach through shows like this or through posting, why not send it with love, consideration, kindness? It doesn't hurt. Most people feel, well, it looks weak. Well, you're weak if you think it looks weak,
Well,
because
yeah, that's their opinion, and that's about them, not about you. And I think, grace is such an incredible thing that we all need to practice and be consistent with, because sometimes, and doing lives has given. I had to have grace with myself. Not everything was perfect coming out of the gate. There were some mistakes, and it's like you can't be hard on yourself because it's a learning process, and and I really allowed myself that. because working in marketing in the financial services space, specifically capital markets, you have to be perfect, for lack of a better term, when you go to market. It has to, 15 sign offs from the legal and compliance department, FINRA review, yada, yada, yada. So doing something, I mean, as an example, just starting your show, we had no word, no anything then. It was just, we're going to go live. And I was terrified. Like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? But then also starting my show, we threw a date on the calendar and we're like, we're just going to start on this date. I think I created a logo the night before we started promoing. So there wasn't all this perfectness, if you will, which I normally needed to have. We probably still wouldn't have launched if we were waiting to have everything be perfect. And, total side note, I do have a friend that they've been trying to launch a product for 18 months and they're still in design back and forth. And it's like, y'all, you need to throw something out in the market because you're missing the boat. They've already missed the holiday, which was the whole goal, because they're waiting to be perfect. And I think that is the part. Guess what? I don't know everything. And life is it's an education, right? Every single day. Not only is it our playground, but it's our school. We don't know everything, and we're supposed to learn. And that's part of the fun, is learning from it. So I think that was a wildly important thing to bring up, Sonia. So thanks for that. We do need to be consistently graceful with ourselves, particularly, and with others. I mean, that's the other thing. When I see someone else on a show and you see them, fumbling, or you can tell that they're nervous, I've sent people messages, hey, you did a great job. I can totally relate to, XYZ, whatever happened. Because again, that's just being consistent with support, and probably brings back to a thing that we talk about pretty often, too, Dawn, is about we're not in competition with one another. Like, there's plenty of room for people to do their thing. And surrounding yourself with others that want you to succeed at that and shine at it and do great things, instead of, you don't want to be around people who are trying to pull you down or being in competition with you. I'm going to go back to the whole thing of being consistently be kind to others, because they're on their own journey and you're on yours. And when you're projecting, which this is a great reminder, when you're projecting judgment on others, it has to do with something in you, and you need to pay attention to, why am I being so judgmental on that? What is it hitting in me that I don't particularly like about myself? Because that is just a fact. Just saying.
No, that's all terrific. And, a lot of times, like you say, your feelings about something are not based on really strong context or knowledge.
Right.
It's based on comparing something to something that might be something like it. And it's usually related to something you weren't very happy about, right? If it matches up with this and that and it didn't work out, well, then you think, well, maybe this won't work out.
Yeah.
I was never one for public speaking. I always felt that was a challenge, because I didn't realize it was me looking out at people and sharing. I looked at like they're looking all at me.
Yes.
Waiting for something. And
Uh-huh.
and once you forget about the audience in a good way, you never forget about them and what you're trying to provide them. But whether there's one person in front of you or a million, it shouldn't change how you think or what you say. And I think the other thing about consistency is feeling better every day about yourself by combining everything that took place in that day. Like I say, when I had my retail stores, it was that one irate customer that everybody talked about, and not the 99 who came in, were very friendly, did what they needed to do, and left, with good thoughts and ideas behind them. And why then do you pick the exception and use that as the rule to determine your day? Right? I mean, something awful could have happened in an area of your life, but a lot of great things could have happened in different areas of your life, right? Why not just combine them and give yourself an overall score? And, the other thing is, whatever has happened, you got to get ready for the next day, and you can't have yesterday chasing tomorrow. Dragon Legacy that doesn't work for you because you
Right.
haven't gotten over it yet.
Yeah,
Or
and Harvey has a good, that was a great transition into Harvey's comment.
which one, the race?
Yeah,
I remember watching a race and someone fell. The person lead stopped to help and
yeah.
crossed the finish line. I see that so many times,
Yes.
and what it is it's natural. I mean, when you're running a race, you're not thinking of anything but the race. And
Right, and
absolutely, when someone falls down, your natural instinct is to help them up or to console them.
well,
Uh,
not every person's natural instinct. Some might be like, "This is awesome because they're never gonna catch me now."
and there might
Um,
be even people that trip them up. So
yes.
you know,
Whoops.
and I think that's part of it. I don't really see too many people who are going to finish first do that.
Right.
I do see people who are in the race and stop to help somebody, uh, but that's gets more views and more attention than the person who won the race.
But, isn't it funny these days because, we do see those, and I do remember back in the day, the Olympics, and they would always show the stories of the athletes of some of them, and
Mhm.
you would sob. I mean, just they were so touching and their journeys. But in today's world, and I think this is part of, with social media, and part of the reason that I did have fear of doing a live, but LinkedIn is, thank God, a totally different space than the rest of the social media platforms, is people can't wait to highlight something that's negative. And quite honestly, there's a lot of negative things that get put out there on purpose because people will attract to it. And it's being fed all the negativity, and we're not seeing. So when I think when we see those stories, it touches us even more because it's like, see, there are good people out there, and I do believe there's more good people out there than not. I just don't think they get the same airtime that a lot of these negatives or follies or what have you. I mean, for goodness sakes, on Instagram, what is it? They always have these ridiculous um challenges. Like they had that eat a Tide Pod. Like that was a thing. And people would videotape themselves eating it, or all these other stupid things that are truly dangerous to your life, not just. And I mean, I think I was one of those kids who pushed the envelope. I was curious. I did all the things, but I'm like, but I wasn't stupid. Like I would never have been like, let's do the Tide Pod challenge. Um, I knew what stupid was to a degree. I mean, because I was a kid, you do make stupid mistakes, but um, so that part to me is just bizarre how that is even a thing. Um, but I love when you see people like this, when someone falls and they get up and they end up not even winning. And it's like, wow, you trained all this time and you'll be remembered for more greatness than for winning. Because how long do we remember that winner of a race? No offense to anyone who's run a race, but you don't really remember it the following year because you're focused now on the new race. But you'll remember the guy who got up and helped the one that fell for a very long time, if not forever, because it was something, because it made you feel. And this goes to the whole thing of people don't remember what you did or said, they remember how you made them feel. Um, So I think that just goes back to the consistency, but being a good human and being kind and
Well,
loving.
what's interesting about that is one day you won't be running,
That's
but
right.
you can continue to help people up, right? And that's a
Yeah.
skill and a virtue that you learn while you're really focused on something that's primary. So it shows being consistent and being comprehensive, right? Not just having one thing, but other things along with that one thing that gives you more opportunity and more. It's not learning things that's as important as learning people.
Yeah, and I think because we were talking about Charles Caldwell, his name came up right before we came on, is it makes me think like our job is to make our ceiling someone else's floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved that. And I'm like, yes, we should always be looking to lift people up higher than ourselves. I mean, I don't know. I just thought that was I thought of it right as you were saying that. And interesting because I haven't heard that in quite a while, but it's such a great one.
Well, it's kind of funny about Charles. I don't know if everybody knows Charles Caldwell, but he's in Hong Kong, heads up the largest English speaking school system in Hong Kong with about 32,000 kids. And he catches the show and has been on the show, and it starts 11 p.m. Hong Kong time,
Yeah.
and he's got a day job. So usually it was Fridays and Saturdays when I guess he could sleep in or not have to worry about going to work. So, and over a year, you see people come and they're really involved, and then you don't see them. Then they come back again. And it just happened. He messaged me saying, I'm going to be in Canada for 2 weeks around Christmas. I'd love to do your show because then it's 9 a.m. his time and 9 a.m. my time. So I said, sure, you pick a day. And he said, well, I'd love to start the year with you. So can we do January 1st and call it New Beginnings as the topic?
I love it.
And I said, for sure. And then he just messaged me and said, well, I'm going to be here 2 weeks. I'd like to add more to that. So it's like, well, whenever you're available,
Yeah.
you're more than welcome. And what was fascinating about this week is I had my first 4-person show that I can remember. And it was all because of my not doing everything the way it should have been, but a little confused, and scheduled Kim, who's just a wonderful lady out in London and has gone through tremendous challenges and has an unbelievable TEDx speech that I watched. It's about 11 minutes, and it goes into her situations and what she got through and who she is today. And Denise Drinkwalter, who was recommended by Beverly, was the guest. And anyways, we started, and Kim says, I haven't gotten the link. And I said, well, I thought we switched for next week. I look, we were both for next week. So anyways, I said, well, come on. And I know Beverly and Denise had no idea. And this was Denise's first time. So it's like, well, who's this and how does this work?
But that's a great example, because that was because I remember when I tuned in and it like took me aback. So I'm like, oh my God, there's 4 because I'm so used to the 3. But there's where consistency or an inconsistency worked in the benefit, because sometimes changing things up does get people to be like, oh, wait, what's happening here? Because I loved that. And we get to do 4-person in January.
Yeah, well, I'm looking to keep adding because to me, it's no different than if, let's say this is a breakfast table and a really great friend knocks on the door and say, hey, we got plenty for to pull up a seat. Come on, let's get you in. And just happened, all 3 women were into women's empowerment. They aligned with each other. And I threw out that, hey, because of this, I said, Denise, you can come back next week, which she is, because I didn't want to minimize it. But I also realized that me and Beverly, or if it was Harvey or Kelly, would have not taken anybody's extra time. We would have given our time. So if 3 people get 20, 2 people can still get 20 and 2 people can get 10. Yeah. Right. And that way we're doing more supporting than overseeing or integrating, because to what Kelly does and Harvey does and what we try to do here is give people a voice who deserve it, who haven't had the proper audience or the stage or experience. And I know the more people that come on Harvey's show and my show and Kelly's show and Leslie's show, and Beverly's got a show now, and it's so great. It's kind of like when you first got your license and who's got a car, right? Yeah. And then you kind of mooch a ride off of whoever's got a car if you want to go somewhere. How many people
can you cram in?
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're so happy when their parents gave them the keys next week, and now you can share riding. So everybody having a car makes a lot of sense, especially if you got a driver's license, which you do on LinkedIn. And being able to enjoy the ride with other people, because it's not always where something's leading, it's where something already is.
Well, and right? I think that's such an important point, right? Is it can't always be about what is this going to do for me, because sometimes you don't know what it's going to do for you until you go along with it. Like just be present in it and be because I know for a lot of people who have come back to LinkedIn or maybe are on LinkedIn for the first time, it can feel overwhelming. But just don't try to do everything at once. And you can, learn from others, reach out to people, ask questions. Um, but I don't necessarily because even and I'll go back to the awesome journey as an example. I knew what I envisioned in my mind, but I didn't and I knew I wanted to bring motivation, inspiration, and hope to the world for an hour a week, but I didn't really know where it was going to go. And same thing with being on the Hour of Empower. Didn't know where it was going to go, but it was always like, "Ooh, but I'm enjoying this ride," and how it's changing, evolving, and expanding me, and enjoying being present in the journey. Because I think we're always too, not always, but I think we spend too much time focused on a destination that we're not being focused in the presence of the journey. And that's the beauty of it all.
Well, maybe the consistency is having that journey that way every day that eventually evolves into it. Because if you keep adding something every day that you didn't have the day before, eventually things start coming together. And
Mhm.
the other thing is you get to strengthen and retain relationships that you want to.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you invite somebody on like Beverly, you get to know Beverly pretty good every
Yes.
Tuesday. And you
Yes.
get to work with Beverly. And that means so much more than bringing a brand new person who you have no relationship, no context with. And, that's where you have to start. But when you already have that relationship and that conversation, because what you find is that's enough just there. Right? I mean, if you go visit somebody, have a wonderful afternoon with them, that was enough to make that afternoon worthwhile. It's not what does it lead to tomorrow and what am I going to get
Right,
in
right,
a week or
right,
two.
right.
And also, you got to ask yourself, how much are they giving in order for them to receive? So it's not like you're just the benevolent one and everybody's just accepting. They're working hard to think. They're working hard to put ideas and thoughts out there that you can live with or build on. And I think it's like Noah, it's building is what we're trying to do is everybody gets together, brings their tools with them, figures out, hey, where does work need to be done today? How do we combine and get it done? And everybody sees the beginning. And fortunately, they don't have to visualize the end just yet. They just have to work, earn
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
deserve it. Everybody wants it probably for the wrong reasons
Mhm.
initially until they find the right people and then they find the right reasons with those people. So like Kelly says, if you can just leave everything behind when you go forward with somebody and allow that somebody and what's going on to now shape what is reality
Yeah.
as opposed to what you presumed, what you feared, what you hoped. You're just polishing something that isn't even there yet. I know we're almost at the end,
Yeah, I
but
like what,
let me
Sylvia
cover
said
all
here.
the last comments, extending grace to others as well, for
Amen.
sure. Sonja says, get ready to get ready is a killer. Comes back, was prodigious here. Our brains are naturally more sensitive to risk than reward. We have to learn to disrupt their natural inclination. So smart in what you're saying there. Dennis, agree to live to lift. We all lift each other up even further than we could
Oh,
have
I
done
love
ourselves.
this.
Yes, I met Charles at a conference in 2019 in New York City. Well, that's another thing. If it's good enough for Charles, if it's good enough for some of these wonderful people, it says it's good enough, right? If Charles going on vacation for 2 weeks,
I
why
love
would he fill it with this if it wasn't that? Be like Dorothy, follow the yellow brick road as the bricks appear. It's
right,
an
not knowing where you're
adventure.
really going.
It is great when the awesome journey is awesome. Uh,
Huh.
and I think that's the key is
Dennis,
community. You never have enough. I've never said, boy, I have too many wonderful friends. I wish somebody would not be my
right.
friend. It's
I've got
usually,
too many, I need to stop.
yeah, and the thing is I can be a better friend. So you don't need more friends. You want better friends. You want more connected friends. And that's the other reason you want them to be successful because if they are, they'll stick around.
Mhm.
If all they are is here to build your success and it doesn't happen to them, you're going to lose them. And that was probably the foundation for your success. So you almost have to go out of your way. What can I do to get you up there? To
Mhm.
get you making some money, to get you things that you want. And that's another element of consistency is knowing what really people are here for. You know, one good thing that does prepare for a show like this is the initial call you have, right? If you're not having that initial call to get to know somebody before they get on a show, it's a disservice to everyone because in the end, what I say is, you know, what we just did just now is exactly how we're going to do the show together. Having a good conversation, getting to know each other, and just allowing other people to learn from it. And I
Mm.
think that puts people at ease because so many people say, well, what do I need to prepare? And some people say, can you send me your questions in advance? Because that's what they're
Yeah.
used
There are none.
yeah, and the thing is if you get as comfortable as you want, but you never have to be uncomfortable, right? So someone could say, I'm just going to be comfortable, say a few things. Once you start saying a few things, you find out how easy it is to say more things. And I think in most cases, we have to hold people back a little, you know, to not overwhelm people with
Yeah.
information. And that's another thing I'm learning is a person talking more often for less time, right? So I'd rather have someone talk 15 times about something for a minute than twice for something for 8 minutes,
Mhm.
especially if it's an audience exchange. But, you know, everybody's different. I know I have freed myself up more and more, not to say, well, this is what our focus is, right? Our focus is really the audience naturally first, but it's wherever your mind wants to take you. And there are cathartic moments where people release things or share things they never would have thought they were going to do.
Mhm.
But the environment was welcoming, the audience was supportive because, you know, it's almost like you're out of jail. You're okay. You know, whatever happened, I know Kelly runs into more people who have far more ghosts in their closets and traumatic things to overcome. Uh, and that is really the value is the ability to overcome, to not only overcome, but to excel. You know, we talk about Greg Martin, we talk about Dave Snell, right? People that now are dedicating their life to
Yes.
lives like their own. And that now is their battle, right?
Yep.
They're warriors for something they choose to win at. And, you know, every one of us is winners. And the key is how happy do you want to be winning? To me, getting through the day is a win. You know, not getting yourself in trouble is a win. There's so many things you
Well, I
can.
don't know. Sometimes getting in trouble is a win. I don't know.
Well, it depends on the consistency of how much trouble and how good you are at it.
Yes.
But with that, I want to say thank you. Appreciate everybody here. I'll let Kelly close like she always does, an inspiration to us all.
Aw. Yes. So, I mean, so fun, always fun. And yes, like yes, Sonia said, allow the conversation to flow. Absolutely. I think my final wrap up. Well, I will end how I always do, but the first thing is be consistent with being present and showing up for yourself. Like I think when we have that mindset and we do that regularly, you'll be so surprised at what you learn and maybe what you were not seeing before because you do see things differently when you allow yourself to be present and aren't so focused on that destination and enjoy the journey and where you are. Um, so those are my final thoughts on that. And like I always end, I thank everybody for being here today. And please go out and shine so bright that others can't help but shine too.
Well, that was great, Kelly. And if there's anything consistent about you, it's your goodness and the value you bring to so many over time. And no one can question that consistency. So thank you all. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And tomorrow, if it's Thursday today, must be Friday tomorrow. And tomorrow we've got Leslie and myself
Oh,
uh,
nice.
and achievement is the word tomorrow. So
Oh, that'll be a good one.
I'm going a day off almost. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Be consistent in your goodness.